Can you all hear me?
Yes, I can hear you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. Can you see me?
No, I don't see you.
Huh, let me, I don't, let's see, integrated camera. Okay, let's try that. Huh. That's funny. I don't know why. Let's see, you can see this.
Mayor, this is Richard from KCRT. I'm going to stop your video and then I'm going to ask you to start your video. Let's see how that works. Nope, we still don't see you.
I'm still working on it here.
Are you on a computer or laptop?
Yeah, I'm on a laptop, and I did the thing that said start integrated video.
Hit the right arrow next to the start video and then see if you have a listing for the device you're on. If not, you maybe need to reboot.
Okay, wait a minute. Okay, I pressed on the video thing. It says select camera, and I checked integrated camera. What else can I do?
I would reboot real quick.
Say what?
Reboot your computer.
Are you on a laptop, Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
Do you have maybe a switch near your camera that is maybe slid over so that it blocks the camera?
I mean, the camera's on my laptop.
Is there a little tiny switch that maybe you could slide back and forth?
Uh, huh. I don't see one.
Why don't you try to reboot real quick?
Let me go back. Hang on here a minute. Let me go back and look at. Let me go back and look at my control panel.
Sometimes if you, Mr. Mayor, if you are in a laptop, on the bottom, maybe your little camera is closed. So look at there.
Let's see your location. Now, give me just a second here. Sound display. I don't know. You know, I've done this before and it's worked. I don't know what the problem is. Well, I don't know. Do I have to have a video on?
Would be nice.
So there's nothing under the Brand Act that requires you to have your video on.
It looks like your device says does look like a lock. There's a little display look like lock. I would try to reboot your computer, laptop real quick. Let's try that.
Black, look like block reboot. So you think I'll reboot it?
Yeah, just reboot it real quick. Let's
All
start
right.
from scratch.
Okay, I'll reboot it quick.
Mike, did you just turn off
Okay,
your camera?
Yeah, I was just
hang
kind
on.
of demonstrating what it looks like when I lock out my camera, you know, versus when I open it.
Okay, let me reboot real quick.
Thanks for your help.
Okay, I'm back on now. Can you hear me? You can't see me though, can you?
No.
Mr. Mayor, when I lock my laptop, it kind of shows a screen similar to yours. I would look near the camera for a little switch that maybe is covering your camera. Looks like your computer is.
Oh, hey, you're right. There you go.
There you
Bingo.
go. He's getting
This
it.
is what I was saying.
Hang on, it should come on now. I see what you're saying. Yeah, hang on a minute. Huh. Yeah, you're right. I see, I just did the switch, but it's, huh.
Now it might be something different.
You-
No, I see the switch. I just switched.
Make sure Zoom is set to start video below.
I'm sorry, what?
Make sure it says on Zoom that you're activated to start video.
Oh, wait a minute.
Now, Mike, that's the same display you had.
Yeah, that's the exact same one.
Mayor, I'm
The
gonna try
switch?
this. I'm gonna stop your video and I'm gonna ask you to turn it on. We'll see what happens.
Okay. Okay, I'm gonna turn it back on now.
No, it's the same display. Do you keep touching that switch area? Move it up. Okay, go the other way, and that's locked. Still in lock mode.
I don't know why it won't work.
Can you use your phone or something else, another device?
Let me try my smartphone here a minute. Hang on here a minute. Oh, wait, that's the wrong email. Just a second. Maybe today, okay. Well, the reception on my smartphone is so bad, I can't. I don't know, anybody got any other ideas about how I can get this camera on? If not, I guess I'm just gonna have to bail out.
Yeah, I found something online. It
Okay,
says, look at your F1 to F12 keys to see if there's a symbol with a camera on it. And then it says, if so, press that key or function plus that key.
wait, I didn't follow you. So start over. Look at what?
Let me, can I share my screen or no?
Go ahead.
No, it can't.
Oh, F1. I'm sorry. Okay, try function F1.
Yeah, let me paste it in the messages. I just pasted what I found online.
And Mike,
Yes.
maybe you could walk the mayor into the power key, settings, camera, and look at those. And then he'll have full access to what's turned on and off. And down at the bottom of that page, he'll probably find the Zoom, which may need to be the Zoom, the camera for Zoom specifically. You follow me?
No, I'm not following.
So the start key to the settings menu. Click on settings. Will take him into system.
Oh yeah, yeah. The Windows.
Then type in camera or find camera, and then all of his camera permissions will be there. He'll be able to see if everything is on and off. And there's one down low on that control screen that specifically addresses Zoom or any other remote meeting.
Yeah. Okay,
Okay, thank you.
sure. Let me make sure I can find it myself. Yeah, okay. So maybe this is it. Mr. Mayor, if you could click on the Windows in the lower left-hand corner, the Windows start button. And there's a gear that'll take you to settings.
Mr. Mayor, we can't hear you anymore.
Can't hear me?
Now we can.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, I'm listening to Mike. Okay, go to settings and then what?
And now there's a search bar up there. Just type in camera.
Okay. Okay, camera, let's see.
Should have something about allowing access to the camera.
Well, there's a camera app and then there's camera privacy settings,
Camera
Yes.
privacy settings.
Yes.
Yeah.
privacy
Camera
settings.
privacy
Okay. Okay, all right.
Now in there, you should have, there's a switch that says allow apps to access your camera. That should be on. And
Okay.
then it also has some specific
Yeah,
apps.
allow access is on. Okay,
Okay. And then you should be able to zoom down to allow desktop apps to access your camera on. And there should be one that says Zoom meetings. Since you have Zoom started.
allow desktop access. Oh, Zoom meetings. It says currently in use.
Yeah, that's what mine says too. Okay.
Okay, great.
So I'm a little stumped then.
Mayor, this is Richard. Keep playing with that switch on your laptop, because at first you had something else besides the lock. Now you're back on lock like you were previously.
The top. Step.
Yeah, okay. Hang on a minute.
That's one at the top.
One of the function switches. Let's see, maybe.
Play with the switch that's right next to your camera, because you were doing something
Oh,
earlier.
okay. Well, I switched it to the left and the light went off, and then I switched it to the right and a little light goes on. I don't know which. Can you see those symbols on my screen? Can you see them changing?
Yeah, we definitely don't want the lock one.
Okay, so the other one's on.
On that one. And look at your body of your Zoom. Does it say start video is on or off?
Say again?
On the Zoom itself, does it say start video? Is the button pressed?
Yeah. It's just,
Okay, then look to the right arrow, right next to the start video, and re-off what your options are.
video settings. Oh, maybe this is it. Integrated camera. Let's see. That's on. My video, mirror, my video, advanced noise. I don't know, everything's on.
Pick one of the other options on this.
I don't know. I give up. You guys go ahead. Somebody else can run the meeting. I can't do it. I'll just listen. I'll watch and listen.
Mr. Mayor, you can also use your phone if that is also a tool.
I can't, my phone doesn't work. I don't have enough reception here to work off my phone.
Well, the time is now 3:19. So we have a quorum. So I guess, let's see, I need to pull up my agenda here. The mayor can not conduct the meeting because of technical difficulties. As vice mayor, I guess I will take charge. So this is the special open session to hear public comment before closed session. Can we have a roll call?
Yes, Councilmember Bates has informed us he will be absent for this meeting. Councilmember Jimenez,
Presente.
Councilmember Johnson.
Here.
Councilmember McLaughlin,
Here.
Councilmember Willis,
Here.
Vice Mayor Martinez.
Here.
No.
Do we have any public speakers?
Yeah. We have one hand up so far, or two now?
Yes, I'm sorry, may I read the items that will be discussed
Yes.
in closed session?
Thank you.
Okay. Conference with legal counsel, existing litigation, Spraldeff et al. Versus City of Richmond, the Giddyville Rancheria of California et al. Versus the United States of America et al., North Coast Rivers Alliance et al., Point Melody Alliance et al. Versus City of Richmond, conference with legal counsel, anticipated litigation, 3 cases. And now we can move to public comment.
Okay, so far I have Mike Medvey, Doria, and Pam Stello. Mike Medvey, you'll have 2 minutes to speak. You can go ahead and start.
Oh, I was just, I fell off and I need to be promoted to panelist again. That's all.
Okay, okay. The next speaker will be Doria. Doria, you'll have 2 minutes to speak. You can go ahead and start.
Hi. I live in Richmond, have for 30 years, and I have been going out to Point Melody since the mid-90s. I really going out to that space out there. I just was made aware, I've been watching what's been going on with Point Melody, and it's really disconcerting. I can't imagine a bond amount going from 100 million to almost 300 million, and with no clear explanation. I mean, apart from Point Melody, it doesn't really matter what it is, but a place like, I mean, it's breathtaking, and I can't believe our city would do that. I mean, it makes no sense whatsoever. Is there that level of incredible stupidity somewhere? I don't. Came to the city, our school district was completely bankrupt, and 20 years worth of children had to pay that price. Is that what we're going to do again? But instead of a school district, we're going to do the whole city. Point Melody doesn't need a development. What it needs is it needs people, lots of people, by that space, not just a few individuals who park out there. And it's not a safe place. It's not an economically sound place. It's really not a place for any sort of large development. I just am incredulous. All right. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. The next speaker is Pam Stello. Pam, you'll have 2 minutes to speak. You can go ahead and start.
Hi, my name is Pam Stello, Richmond resident. I support Doria's points. This will be this project, or CFD if passed, will bring multi-generational financial impacts to Richmond. The CFD for SunCal's plan is a shell game. While SunCal promises to cover deficits to our general fund, they're providing no money up front, have no equity in the project, and are protecting their parent company from risk with a limited liability corporation, Winehaven Legacy LLC, that has no assets and can walk away at any time with no penalty. The city has no such protections in this scam. SunCal has had almost 2 years to prove their promise to Richmond of no impacts to our general fund. Instead, the SunCal approved consultants. That's to say, the development agreement allows SunCal to reject consultants on this project 3 times. So these consultants were not rejected by SunCal, and we can see why. They've come back with rosier and rosier appearing plans, but independent analyses show the SunCal consultants' numbers are based on false assumptions, exaggerated selling prices and absorption rates, and other sleights of hand. Each plan has increased impacts to our general fund, while the most recent plans falsely promise surpluses. According to 3 independent analyses, the SunCal plan will cost our general fund tens of millions of dollars in the best case scenarios and hundreds of millions in the worst, and could bankrupt the city. SunCal has not met its promise of no risk to our general fund, nor even honest business dealing. Its approved consultants have attempted to hide the general fund impacts and long-term multi-generational costs. Vote no on the intent to form a CFD for SunCal's shell game. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker is Linda Klein. Linda, you'll have 2 minutes to speak. You can go ahead and start.
Hi, my name is Linda Klein. I'm the land use attorney for Winehaven Legacy LLC. I recently reviewed the proposed denial of the resolution of intention. I wanted to correct a few issues. Actually, all 4 conclusions in section 9 are incorrect. And the resolution, the way it's worded, violates the development agreement that was negotiated and approved by the city. The 8th whereas clause, it's really not appropriate at this time to reconsider all matters in the DA. Only the CFD, resolution of intention, is on the agenda, and it's the only issue that should be discussed. Section 4, the services provided actually exceed what's provided in the city overall. The city wanted this project to pay for a 183-acre park, including the open space and the shoreline park, a fire station, a police station, full staffing, and additional amenities that most residents don't have. And that's part of the reason if somebody chooses to buy in the development, they would be choosing to have slightly higher taxes. The proposal results in 0 impacts on the general fund. My client has explained this issue multiple times. Also, all the provisions of the DA have equal force and effect. There's always uncertainties with projections, but I would say this project's a lot like Oak Knoll, which has been super successful down in Oakland. The amount of the bond always is padded out, probably 10 to 20% more than estimated costs. And it's also something that was negotiated in the DA. The DA is clear on what the taxes are. And also we all suffer inequitable taxes. My neighbors pay 1/10 of what I do for the same house due to Prop 13.
Time has expired. Thank you. The next speaker is Kathleen. Kathleen, you'll have 2 minutes to speak. You can go ahead and start. Kathleen, if you could please unmute yourself.
Thank you, sorry.
Okay.
I just want to turn off the volume here. I'm sorry.
Okay.
Okay. Is that any better?
Yes, a lot better. You can go ahead and start.
I just want to urge you to vote no on this matter before you. I am kind of hesitant to have any development out there other than recreational and outdoor and environmental activities. But to have something that's going to cost the city money well into the future, just is a bad deal. I mean, as Pam Stello just indicated, there's nobody with any risk here other than the citizens of Richmond. And I trust that all of you have better sense than to enter into such a bad deal. So I hope that you vote no on this matter before you. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker is Jim Hansen. Jim, you'll have 2 minutes to speak. You can go ahead and start.
Council members, thank you again for the hard work bringing into the sunlight the risks of entering into a multi-million-dollar Melrose bond arrangement for SunCal that gets repackaged but just doesn't get any better. The information from the earliest discussion of this item in November 2021 brought forth the financial risks involved. You were told that one major way to reduce risk to our city is to require the developer to fund major infrastructure before bond funds are released. That way the developer has more cash equity in the land, and land value is increased by improvements. But no, SunCal is not interested in putting their money here. As with that last, frankly, screwy scheme to have the city, us, pay for general fund deficits from this project, SunCal wants to put all the losses on the city, as well as the bond investors who are only able to come after who? The city, not SunCal. The CFD is not the way to go. The city and public rights were given away in the development agreements by the previous council. The deficits to the city, which will have to come from the general fund and were first outlined in the strategic economics report, have not been adequately addressed. The continued tax on council time, staff cost, and careers and on residents only continues with now the tripling of the bond amount to almost $300 million. It's unbelievable. I think we'd all like to be spending our time on something positive for Richmond, such as affordable housing. So I regret that you have to deal with this. But all of SunCal's shallow offers and the shell games around hitting up the general fund from this proposed developments tells us enough to know that this bond proposal is a bad deal for us. The verdict should be for the whole council, including the council members who signed the original development agreements and want to see smart, responsible for finances for Richmond to reject this much too costly
Your
proposal.
time has expired. Thank you. The next speaker is Alex Mezuet. You'll have 2 minutes to speak. You can go ahead and start.
Yes, good afternoon, Alex Mazuet, and good afternoon, council members, and thank you so much for all the work you do for our Richmond communities. So this is a very complex issue, and in my opinion, there are too many important questions the developer hasn't answered, so I'll get right to my questions. Why have the consultants hired by the city and approved by SunCal not provided the council and city attorney with background information and clear data in support of their verbal claims? On what assumptions are the developers' claims made in terms of profit for the city, short and long term? What exactly will be the sale price per square foot for these condos at Pont Polade? In fact, when was the latest analysis conducted, and does it take into account today's tremendous increases in building and labor costs? In the end, how exactly a potential lawsuit by the developer compare with the everlasting catastrophe this housing development for the rich would bring? I urge the council, please vote no on this CFD. The people of Richmond and its city can stand together. We can stand strong against a private profit-making enterprise whose financial gain will not reach the city's coffers and will not lessen our community's financial hardships. Thank you very much.
Thank you. The next speaker is Jeannie Courts. Jeannie, you have 2 minutes to speak. You can go ahead and start.
Yes, Jeannie Courts, Richmond resident. Good afternoon. As a reminder, I am restating comments I made 2 weeks ago on the CFD. The average income in Richmond is $65,000 per year. Supporters of SunCal's current plan are out of touch with housing and other immediate needs of the majority of Richmond residents. Instead of focusing on affordable housing near transit hubs that would help many Richmond families stay in Richmond, and bring development, business, and local employment opportunities to our neighborhoods. The focus is on a luxury development, using limited city and planning department resources for a highly risky development that will cost struggling Richmond taxpayers who can't dream of buying a home there, but will be subsidizing its wealthy residents. To buy a condo at the target selling price of $1,485,000, you will need an income of $300,000 per year. If your income is $300,000 per year and you paid 30% of it in taxes, that leaves you $210,000. Add on to that your mortgage and HOA fees. How many people do you think will want to spend more than half of their income to live at Point Malate? The losses of our general fund and bondholders just to subsidize people who do not live in Richmond would leave us with a relatively small chance of avoiding significant cumulative losses. We need to see a 30-year cash flow spreadsheet done by an independent consultant other than Integra and made available for public review. Please vote no on this CFD. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. The next speaker is Danny Zaki. Danny, you'll have 2 minutes to speak. You can go ahead and start.
Hi, council members. It's nice to see all of your faces. I'm Danny Zaki, an organizer with the San Francisco Bay chapter of Sierra Club and a former organizer with the Listening Project. Just wanted to talk about the development here on Point Malate. I think it's important to remember that our community is already overburdened with pollution, with industry. Development is only going to increase those impacts that the community already is burdened with every single day. And as a lot of the folks who have spoken before me have pointed out, that this development will not benefit the folks who are already within the community, the schools that desperately need funding, the folks who desperately need housing, and not to mention that this is a shoreline development. As someone who looks at sea level rise all too often, this is not a sustainable project either. So putting luxury condos in an area that very likely could be experiencing flooding in the next 60 years, it just doesn't make a lot of sense. So I urge you to vote no. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. The next speaker is Jamin Purcell. Jamin, you'll have 2 minutes to speak. You can go ahead and start.
Hello, my name is Jamin. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Sorry. Hello, my name is Jamin Purcell, Richmond resident. I really want to urge the council to be able to say no to this beyond the environmental impacts, beyond that this has been a bad deal. As a younger person who is a member of this city, I am really concerned about the fiscal impact it's going to have upon the city. We already have a limitation on the city services we're allowed because of a tight budget that we have, and putting more upon that budget is going to just continue the spiral of having to cut services. And I want to make a point that Gail McLaughlin has also pointed out, that the remote nature of this is not going to be able to serve the residents of that. They're not going to have a grocery store. They're not going to have restaurants. They're not going to have access to a lot of things that people want when they're buying a house. These are going to be very, because they're so remote, these can only be purchased by not only the super wealthy, but people who are completely not associated with the city of Richmond. And I don't think that we should be handing off this large portion of land to essentially creating a second city, and then having the greater amount of the city have to subsidize it. It's just as an absurd arrangement. And I really think that she made that point really clear about how distant it is going to be. So I will repeat again, I really urge you to vote no. Thank you so much.
Thank you. The next speaker is Sally Tobin. Sally, you'll have 2 minutes to speak. You can go ahead and start.
Hi, Sally Tobin, Richmond resident. Consultant Northcross gives excellent presentations, but I believe he understates financial risk to the general fund. He has said that the city would get its money back through auction of the land if there's a default or bankruptcy by the developer. He has cited the case of Palmdale, which took 7 years to get to auction and repay $1 million in legal costs. However, he has not given an example of such proceedings when a property has been damaged by refinery disaster or wildfire. Whether Richmond gets its money back depends on the auction. So when livestock are loose on the highways around Port Angeles, Washington, the State Patrol calls my brother Eric. A few years ago, he was called because 3 bulls were objecting to the use of Highway 112 by automobiles. He grabbed his lariat and hooked up his stock trailer, roped and loaded the bulls, and was paid to feed and house the bulls while legal notices were published for the auction. Eric trucked the bulls to the auction, which was attended by a state brands inspector, a secretary, state patrol officers, and an auctioneer. Eric was the only bidder. He bought 3 bulls for $1. The moral of this story is auctions are unpredictable, and there is substantial risk to the city's general fund if the lots being auctioned are next to a refinery that was responsible for thousands of people seeking medical care as recently as 2012. This CFD scheme is not healthy for Richmond's general fund or for its residents. Please vote no.
Thank you. And there are no more public speakers.
Thank you. If there are no more speakers, it's time to adjourn the meeting to closed session. And I want to thank all of the speakers who spoke. Your comments will be considered in closed session. So let us adjourn to close.
I'm sorry, but I think I see one more hand raised in the public.
You can take the speaker if you'd like. It went up after I said there were no more. Oh, there's another one now too. Yes.
Let them speak then.
Okay. The first speaker is Joe Pulio and the second is Dan Engler. Joe Pulio, you'll have 2 minutes to speak. You can go ahead and start.
Just a question before we start. I thought you had 3 minutes to speak on an item.
No, 2. 3 is for public hearings.
Okay. I've looked over all of this material, and basically the consultant's report is smoke and mirrors. For example, they say the fire station has to be prepared before anybody is resident. That's not true. It has to be prepared as soon as SunCal gets out of the ground. The attorney for SunCal said the city requested the fire station. No, the city did not. SunCal's fire underwriters requested the fire station. The proposed sales price of the units are about twice of what the same size units are selling for at Brickyard. And finally, they say, well, there's no problem building near a refinery. Well, that's the wrong question. The problem is building under 400,000 gallons of petroleum tanks, which anyone coming from Marin will clearly see the bulldozers dozing under 400,000 gallons of jet fuel or gasoline, not only on the crest of the ridge, but adjacent to the development. This is a typical scheme by SunCal and others to privatize the profits and socialize the costs. They want the city of Richmond's taxpayers to subsidize their profits. Vote against this Melrose deal. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker is Dan Engler. Dan, you have 2 minutes to speak. You can go ahead and start. Dan Engler, if you could please unmute yourself.
Sorry about that. Thank you. My name is Dan Engler. I am an attorney and I represent the developer Winehaven Legacy. I would like to point out a couple of inaccuracies in the draft resolution declining to establish the CFD that we received just before the start of this hearing. In the section regarding the developer defaults, there's language that indicates that the developer has not funded the deposit agreement for the CFD. That is not true. The developer has funded the agreement. What remains to be done is to actually execute the deposit and reimbursement agreement itself. But that's because there's, we're still negotiating the language, but it has been funded. And as for the $279,000 in expenses, that's new to the developer. The developer has not seen any of those invoices. So I want to clarify that. In addition, on the litigation expenses, that just to set this record straight there, the developer asked for, given the amount, almost $1 million or over $1 million in legal expenses, the city asked for some detailed billing data, which the city then provided. The developer has reviewed it, and the developer has committed to paying all of those invoices within the next 30 days. So I just wanted to make sure everyone is aware of that. And then finally, on the phasing plan, the project will be constructed in 2 phases. The DDA that was approved by the council back in 2020 includes the phasing plan. If you look at the phasing plan, it is quite detailed about what is included in each phase. If there are additional questions about what's in or out, we would be.
Your time has expired. Thank you. And there are no more speakers.
Thank you. I'll give people a second to raise their hands so we don't go through this again. All right. Then let us adjourn to closed session. I'll see you guys on the other side.
I've got my camera on, but it's not, I don't see my photo in there.
Let me see if it's turned off. Give me a second here. Can we exit the Zoom and get back in the Zoom? Is that okay?
I'm sorry, what?
Can we exit the Zoom meeting and then go back in?
Yeah, you want me to do that?
Yeah, let's try
Okay,
that.
that's okay. Yeah, you want to do it or you want me to do it?
Doesn't matter.
I'll do it.
Go for it.
Okay, hang on here. All right, hang on here a second. So leave.
We have 4 council members present, which is a quorum.
Okay, I
Clerk,
will call the roll.
thank you.
Councilmember Jimenez. Councilmember Jimenez.
Presente.
Councilmember Johnson. Councilmember Johnson. Councilmember McLaughlin.
Here.
Councilmember Willis.
Here.
Vice Mayor Martinez.
Here.
Mayor Butt. Okay, and I'll come back to Councilmember Johnson. He's absent.
Can you do the public comment instructional video?
Due to COVID-19, this meeting will be conducted via Zoom pursuant to the provisions of the Governor's Urgency Measure Assembly Bill 361, which suspends certain requirements of the Brown Act. The mayor will call upon council members, staff, and other guest speakers by name. Please speak clearly and state your name before giving comments or remarks. Council members, staff, and guest speakers participating via Zoom with their cameras enabled are reminded that their activities are visible to viewers. Community members participating via Zoom wishing to speak should use the raised hand feature or dial *9 if participating via phone, and the mayor or city clerk will call upon them at the appropriate time. Community members will have up to 2 minutes to speak, 3 minutes for public hearings. After the speaker's time expires, staff will lower their hand and mute their mic. Community members participating via phone will be called upon to speak by the last 4 digits of their phone number. Public input and participation are of the utmost importance to the City of Richmond City Council. Therefore, it is important for public speakers to be ready to address the council when called upon. Public speakers are requested to state their names and city of residence, but providing such information is voluntary. Written public comments received before and during the meeting in accordance with the COVID-19 public comment guidelines printed on the meeting agenda will be entered into the record and published at the clerk's office webpage. If authors of written correspondence would also like to speak on the item, they should raise their hand when prompted by the mayor, and the city clerk will call upon them at the appropriate time. A roll call vote will be taken for all action items. The meeting can be seen on KCRT's TV channel and is being streamed on Zoom, YouTube, and kcrt.com. Thank you for participating in a meeting of the City of Richmond City Council.
Debido a COVID-19, esta reunión se llevará a cabo a través de Zoom en conformidad con las provisiones de la medida de urgencia del gobernador de la Ley de la Asamblea 361, que suspende ciertos requisitos de la Ley Brown. El alcalde llamará a los concejales, a los empleados de la ciudad y a otros invitados a hablar por nombre. Por favor, hable claramente y diga su nombre antes de dar su comentario. Se recuerda a los concejales, empleados de la ciudad y otros invitados participando a través de Zoom con sus cámaras encendidas que sus actividades son visibles al público. Miembros de la comunidad participando a través de Zoom que deseen hablar deberían de usar la función levantar la mano, en inglés raise hand, o marcar *9 si están participando por teléfono. El alcalde y la secretaria municipal llamarán a los oradores en el momento apropiado. Miembros de la comunidad tendrán hasta 2 minutos para hablar y 3 minutos para temas de audiencias públicas. Después de que se expire el tiempo de orador, se le bajará la mano y el micrófono será silenciado. Miembros de la comunidad participando por teléfono serán llamados para su turno usando los últimos 4 dígitos de su número de teléfono. Los comentarios y la participación del público son de suma importancia para el Consejo Municipal. Por lo tanto, es importante que los oradores públicos estén listos para dar sus comentarios al Consejo Municipal cuando sean llamados. Se pide que los oradores públicos indiquen sus nombres y ciudad de residencia, pero proveer dicha información es voluntario. Comentarios escritos recibidos antes y durante la reunión, de acuerdo con las reglas designadas para comentario público durante el COVID-19, imprimidos en la agenda de la reunión, serán ingresados en el registro y se publicarán en la página web de la Secretaría Municipal. Si los autores de la correspondencia escrita también desean hablar sobre el tema, deberían levantar la mano cuando sea pedido por el alcalde, y la Secretaría Municipal los llamará en el momento apropiado. Se realizará una votación nominal para todos los puntos de acción. La reunión se podrá ver en el canal de televisión de KCRT y también se transmitirá en Zoom, YouTube y kcrt.com. Gracias por participar en una reunión de Consejo Municipal de la ciudad de Richmond.
Thank you. I want to acknowledge the mayor as having joined us at the beginning of the public comment of the instructional video. And I also, if he would like to take over the meeting, being the mayor, please let me know. If not, then I will continue.
I can't do it because my camera doesn't work.
Okay. Understood. Thank you. So, do we any statements of conflict of interest? If not, then on to agenda review. I don't suppose there's any changes. And a report from the city attorney for final decisions made during closed session. Hearing none, we'll move on to new business. So can you read the item?
Yes, item L1 is to adopt a resolution adopting local goals and policies relating to community facilities districts, adopt a resolution of intention to establish the City of Richmond Community Facilities District number 2022-1, Point Melody, and to designate 3 improvement areas therein, to authorize the levy of a special tax to pay the cost of acquiring or constructing certain facilities, provide certain services and pay for certain incidental expenses, and to pay debt service on bonded indebtedness, and adopt a resolution of intention to incur bonded indebtedness within the City of Richmond Community Facilities District number 2022-1, Point Melody, and each of the 3 improvement areas therein. There is no requirement of general fund support for these bond measures.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Martinez?
Yes.
I had muted myself there, so I was not able to make my report. We did meet in closed session to discuss the litigation matters that were listed related to Point Melody. We gave a status report in closed session, and there was no reportable action taken.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. And a special thanks for jumping in before we got into the meat of this item. Is there staff who wants to lead us into it? Staff report.
I think we have there was a staff report that was part of your agenda. We have our consultant and team that's been working on this report. So I think they're going to give the report that they were going to give on Tuesday. And when they're done, I want to make a brief statement concerning the resolutions we've provided to you and what your options are at this point. But I think the next step was for Mark Northcross to give his presentation. Are you there, Mark?
Yes. Yeah, and if KCRT could bring up the presentation, that'd be fantastic.
And before I go into the presentation, just that we do have a goals and policy statement on the agenda. I want to point out that the goals and policy statement is intended as a It's a state requirement before any entity forms a CFD to have one, and it's meant to apply to all CFDs going forward. So it's not just for Point Melati, it's intended to be the policy for the city of Richmond going forward. So I just want to get that clear, and happy to ask questions or answer questions on that. The short slide deck I have is on the proposed Point Melati CFD, and really focusing on one particular change that took place after the agenda packet was put together for the March 15th council meeting. And I call it the SunCal concession on fiscal impact. So Mr. Vice Mayor, with your support, I'll take us through that. And again, happy to answer questions when I'm done.
Please, go ahead.
Okay. Your finance team has been in dialogue with SunCal on the concerns about fiscal impact for a few weeks. Basically, last week, a little over a week ago, SunCal made a major concession, in our view, and how the fiscal impact would be addressed, in this case, through what we call the rate and method of apportionment. And then for everybody else to know, that means the actual tax formula for the CFD. Each Melrose district in California essentially has its own equivalent of the tax code. We call it a tax formula. And those of us in the business use jargon. We call it the rate and method of apportionment, or the RMA. The one proposed for Point Melati has two types of taxes: a services tax for municipal services to fund that, as well as a facilities tax. What SunCal agreed to do was to allow a special tax for services on undeveloped property, presumably owned by SunCal or merchant builders, that would cover the negative fiscal impact based on an annual analysis done by a fiscal consultant retained by the city, not by SunCal, that would use the actual sales prices, again, acknowledging there have been different opinions of what the actual sales prices in Point Melati will be. And so you would use the actual sales prices. You would use the BAE model from 2020, which was the city's own retained peer review consultant. And if there is showing a negative fiscal impact, there would be a tax on undeveloped property to make up for that, up to $6.3 million a year. That number is larger than the $5.3 million a year cost for police and fire, which is what really, in my opinion, drives the concerns, legitimate concerns in fiscal impact. The CPI, the services tax would be subject to an annual inflator of 6%. Normally, Melrose taxes have a cap under the statute of 2%. There is no cap, it's for services. 6% is not a legal mandate, but it is a standard in the industry for services tax. That doesn't mean that Richmond has to stick with that, but that is what we put in there. SunCal asked for one other feature, which is the ability, to the extent there are surplus taxes in the future, to be able to use those surplus taxes to reimburse itself for up to $15 million of taxes levied under this category. So that was the offer they put on the table. Before I go to the next few slides, I'd like to pause here and get some questions. Well, I'm not hearing any. I won't hold you all to it. We can go back to this slide. So let's go to the next slide, please. So we revised the worst case fiscal impact analysis. We had put one in the agenda package, which showed on a 30-year build out that there would definitely be a very significant negative fiscal impact. That was in your agenda package. Hopefully, members of the public who spoke earlier noted that. What we did was revise this. And one of the things that I think we got when we had suggested on the original, like back on February 24th in the study session, that the $22 million payment from SunCal that the city gets to retain on transfer of the property be used actually as a fiscal security reserve to hedge against the negative fiscal impact. We got pushback from our electeds here that against that, no surprise. And it turns out with this feature offered by SunCal, we believe we do not need that, okay? So we also wanted to analyze, again, looking at a 30-year build out using the strategic economics home sales prices. That was a very reputable firm retained by, I believe, the Point Melody Alliance. In September 2020, when they released the report, we have access to it. Again, thank you for providing that to us. Their home sales prices assumed for Point Melody are significantly lower than what Integra assumed, which was, again, the city's consultant that we retained to do price point analysis. So those are the assumptions, and we looked at that and said, what does this do? If you don't have this special feature, this concession from SunCal, and 30-year build out at the strategic economics home sales prices, yes, negative fiscal impact on the general fund of the city of Richmond. Next slide, please. Just a little background. This is the range on home sales prices from very reputable firms, all of them with good, with expertise in the area. Integra, however, is the only registered appraiser. So they do have a leg up in that way in the qualification side. But as you can see, the numbers are all over the board. And that certainly makes everyone's job here a little harder when you've got such a wide variety of opinions on what the homes in Point Melody would sell for. Any questions on this slide? If not, I'll go to the next slide. Okay, hearing none, next slide. This is what you saw in your agenda packet. You see the graph on the left. We have, with the 22.5 million in a reserve, we're above the line until that money is wiped out, which it would be, and then it goes negative and stays negative. So there you have it. That's the negative fiscal impact slide without the SunCal concession. So I'm going to go to the next slide unless someone has some questions. Next slide, please. Those are the cash flows. You can see the far right column is where the blue bars and the graph came from. It's basically the ending balance in the reserve. And you can see the original SunCal offer was in the middle column. You see $2 million a year for 5 years. They offered to have that, I'll call it fiscal makeup tax on their property, run at $2 million a year for 5 years. And clearly, as you can see in this scenario, it doesn't work. It helps, but doesn't work. Doesn't solve the problem. Again, unless there's questions, next slide, please. Next slide. Okay, the chart on the left with the makeup from SunCal at up to $6 million a year plus a 6% inflator shows that we're fine. Okay, the draws, you might say, match the inflows. SunCal is making it up every year in the raw land tax, as we call it. I'm sorry, I used bond jargon there. We call taxes on undeveloped property owned by developers raw land tax. So, I periodically drop into jargon, for which I apologize. So even the 30-year build out, it works. Next slide, please, which is the quant. And you can see the far right-hand column. We're showing revenue from your real estate transfer tax, this case only on sales to merchant builders, and the 45 million paid, of which you get half on transfer of the property. Again, the math here is no surprise, it's positive. I do want to give the condition. This is from a technician's perspective, not the community's perspective or our elected's perspective. The technical risk here is that, as one of the members of the public noted, this is owned by a subsidiary of SunCal. And if they go delinquent on their taxes, let's say we do have the negative fiscal impact, we levy the $5 million tax on their raw land. They don't pay it. our only recourse is to foreclose on the property. Okay, this is not a guarantee by SunCal. It is a senior lien on real estate in Point Mulati. And again, as I think our electeds and some members of the public have also noted, there is risk associated with that. We want to recognize that risk. Next slide, please. Conclusion. The potential for negative fiscal impact is as fully mitigated as it can be under the Mello-Roos law. So I want to make it clear, I am not saying the potential for negative fiscal impact is fully mitigated. I am saying it is as fully mitigated as it can be under the Mello-Roos law. Clear distinction there. And it does work, assuming that SunCal pays their exaction when and if it's levied. And that's essentially what these bullets on this slide say. The assuming SunCal pays all the time, and you say, well, how could a negative fiscal impact occur? It can occur if the long-term inflation rate in city operating expenses exceeds the 6% per year annual cap we put in the rate and method, the tax formula you have in front of you. And at the same time, inflation in home prices for a sustained period of time is under the 6% cap. So what this means is that there is a disconnect between inflation in city operating expenses and inflation in real estate. And clearly that's going to result in negative fiscal impact for this project. Personally, I believe it would result in negative fiscal impact for lots of cities and counties in California, period. Can we say that's not going to happen? Absolutely not. We don't know. That is uncertainty. And there's, as we've talked before, there are uncertainties that can't be quantified. It's not like a deck of cards. You can assign a probability to drawing a particular card. Events like this are not things that can be readily assigned a probability. So you have to acknowledge them as being things that can happen. So do we have one more slide? I don't think we do. I think I'm done. So I am ready to answer questions.
All right, thank you. Do we have any questions? Claudia?
Yeah, thank you so much. I think in your last comment, I think in 2018, we were under different assumptions, and 2019 came. And we were with some assumptions thinking that the pandemic was going to end in 6 months. And still we are in 2022 with still a pandemic that hasn't gotten away, and it's getting high numbers in Asia, in Japan and other parts. And then we have a war underway.
Yeah.
Inflation is 8%, I think, right now in terms of, nobody was thinking about that. So I'm glad that you mentioned that and recognize that there is some risk that, yeah, might be the feeling is that maybe that won't be for more and won't happen, and we are going to do well, but we don't know the future that is happening from now on. We are, I think, like, what I hope is that the pandemic is helping us to understand that we are in another game here. And climate change is also another thing that we don't know. And the scientists are predicting more and more things that we cannot put into an analysis, right? So I went to your presentations and thank you for putting time, because we had been talking a lot.
Yeah.
And I was able to click on the PowerPoint, and then there is an Excel file.
Yep.
Right. And when I see that Excel file, I see that, and I don't know, I was confused that you mentioned that the price per unit of 571K that you are saying that you are doing there. But in the other files and the other tables, the number was higher, was 952K. So I wonder if you reconcile that or not.
The numbers in all the build out scenarios, 7 to 15 and 30 years, on the slide deck that said strategic economic sales prices, all were using those numbers. And what we did is took their sales prices and applied it to the current product mix, which is different than the one that was when your former council approved it in 2020. The mix between the single family, mid-rise, and low-rise was different. And so we applied it to the current product mix, and the average is 570,000. But yeah, we're consistent there. There are other slide decks out there. We have version control issues, council member, that used the EPS numbers and then use the Integra numbers. So that's one of the issues. Going back to that slide, they had the 3 different consultants' views of price points. We got 3 different versions out there, but the last one, the one you're looking at, that was in your council packet, and the one we just showed to the public here, all assume the 571 average.
Okay, I want to believe that. Thank you. So the other part is that when I got the tables, the consultant at built out model, there are some assumptions that I tend to believe that it were or overestimated or underestimated. For instance, sales tax, I believe, is overestimated with a 45%, 45%, which means that an average person will spend like over or something around 18,000 per year of tax spending that amount of money in paying this sales tax. And I tend to believe that maybe it's not that, and it's kind of like half of that, or at least 7,000 per year, right? Then you go to the utility user tax. I believe is also overestimated by not looking at residential utility bills. As you know, and you put it there, Chevron is one of the big big contributors to utility user tax. And we have other commercial entities like Sims Metal and others. So I think that is also need to be looked at. And then the property transfer tax, I believe, is overestimated because you are assuming that we are going to be an overturn rate of housing, residential housing of 14.3%. So meaning that in the first year, if with the analysis, with using the 7 years so-called cash flow, they will be selling 207 units. So you are saying that 40.3% of that will be sold next year, or just kind of like over, like, so I don't know, but it seems high. And also you use 6.7% for property, like the property transfer tax for non-residentials, and I think that, and then you put out that you are counting the pension fund. Yeah, it's a tax, a property tax, but that cannot be spent on police and fire in the or the operational costs. because it goes to the pension. It goes directly to that. So counting that is just another thing. And then we are putting commercial property taxes. And one thing that we need to understand here is that there is a lot of, this project is talking about, let me see here, just a lot of office space, and you are counting that. But we don't know, like one thing that this pandemic has shown us is that the way that people are using office is changing. And I know that because there are a lot of office spaces right now that are empty, and people are figuring out what to do with that. And one of the ideas that are running around that I see some people supporting it is how to convert these to a small units to support the unhoused resident. So I just think that even with your assumptions, not counting like we had been, and also just kind of like in terms of what you are estimating, the problem here is that this ignores the impact of a different inflation rate on the full police and fire expenses from day one, versus project revenues increasing slowly at 2% per year for property taxes. And you know that because it's Pro 13. But let's take that into consideration, because you are saying that, oh, they usually over time we don't use inflation because over time that pencils out. But we are in another game ball here with inflation. So what we do with that? Also, it doesn't illuminate the difference between a 15-year built out and a 30-year one. And it doesn't show the annual losses prior to build out. So I'm just thinking about that, and think doing this analysis is still built out without looking at the inflation, which is another thing. Like we don't break even. So I am just really disappointed because I have been asking, and the whole thing that I get is just really convoluted and really not clear to understand and clear to believe that this is not going to impact the general fund. And my last comment to this is, I don't know, but when we are trying to promote development here, we want to start for a place that says this development is going to bring really good things to the community. But in this discussion, what we are here is saying, in fact, this development can impact the general fund dramatically. And then we are trying to figure out how that could not happen, how we can put more taxes, how we can get, instead of 100 million in the bond, 292 millions in the bond for the Belarus, and put more taxes and more things. And I don't think this is the way that we should be discussing this. I think like when we are doing a project, we should say this is a good project. And what we want in this discussion, what we want our consultants to help us is to say, this is a good project, and this are the good impacts, and this is how we can make it better. And I told you the same, and maybe publicly won't be, but it's just kind of like putting perfume too. I am not going to say more, but I just think that we are trying to support something that is already broken. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Vice Mayor, could I just respond to a couple of technical issues here that your Councilmember Jimenez said before? I see Councilmember McLaughlin's got her hand up.
Go ahead.
First technical issue, I am a bond person, not a fiscal consultant. And so the material on the fiscal impact has been prepared by other people. I've been presenting it as it applies to the Mello-Roos. So I am the spokesperson, but I don't do the number crunching. On our team, we have Mike Medvey, who has experience as a fiscal consultant. And Mr. Vice Mayor, if the person who can address Councilmember Jimenez's very astute and, as usual, well thought out comments on that, it would be Mike Medvey, who's actually available, and I think as a panelist to call. So I just want to direct your attention to that. And otherwise, I think this lands more on Mike to respond to if you want a response right now than as opposed to me. So that's just.
All right, Mr. Medvey, if you'd like to respond, go ahead, and then afterwards, Councilmember McLaughlin can speak.
Sure. So I started taking notes maybe a little bit late on the points, and the first note I took was the transfer tax on the turnover rates. I agree they're a little higher than we would put in by default. I should mention that this analysis was prepared in 2020 by EPS and then peer reviewed by BAE, and it was really not really part of our scope to prepare another fiscal analysis or to do kind of a redo of it. So from our perspective, I would say that 16% is a little high. I think the default is 10%. Why would they have put in 16%? My guess is probably because these are smaller homes, they're condos, seen as a starter element, and that those tend to have a higher turnover. Could also be because the residential turnover rate used to be much higher. With the increase in sales prices, people are staying in their homes longer. Part of that might be because they can't afford to move, and part of it is because the benefits of Prop 13, having your assessed value locked in and the value go up. There's a financial benefit there also to staying in your home. And there have been lots of studies on decreases in residential turnover in California, but I don't think the assumption is completely out of line. It's a little high, for the transfer tax turnover rates. On the utility users tax, the Chevron element was excluded from the BAE EPS study. You mentioned there might be other companies that should be excluded as well. Again, we didn't really do a deep dive into the UUT, but I can say that Chevron was excluded. On the pension tax, it's true, it can only be spent on pensions, but the responsibility to fund those pension costs comes from the general fund. So in that case, if there is a property tax that goes solely to pensions, it relieves the general fund of the responsibility to pay for those pension costs. And in that way, it does positively impact the general fund, the pension tax. You had mentioned office space and changes in the way that people are working now. I agree with that. And the thing about office space is it tends to be the least beneficial in terms of value of any of the uses in a project. If it were to be instead of office space, if it were to be a live work or retail or something along those lines, it would probably be better for the project because those tend to go for higher prices than office space. Office space is it doesn't generate any sales tax and it doesn't sell for a particularly high price. So a conversion of the office space would probably be good for the project. Let's see, police and fire. We, as a standard practice, we get those numbers from the city. They're the experts on the police and fire costs, and we don't really have the expertise to question those. And then we talked about escalation. I had shown a chart yesterday that or I should say mentioned a chart yesterday that property tends to increase faster than consumer goods or the consumer price index, which is what most salaries are tied to, is the CPI. So not addressing inflation in these studies is a conservative position, because most of your revenues come from things related to property. And if we were to say, over time, inflation, I think the numbers I was talking about yesterday, inflation is about 2.5% over the last 30 years, and property inflation is about 3.5%. And that spread of 1% persists over long periods. Of course, there are short-term, bumps and valleys, hills and valleys in each of those. But in the long term, because property is a precious decreasing resource, it does tend to inflate faster, and that tends to generate more revenues than we're projecting, not less. The 15-year build out versus 30-year build out. I think what Mark did was to take the BAE and EPS analysis and run it in a whole bunch of different scenarios. Some of them included a 15-year and 30-year build out. I don't know how many of them contained which sales prices, but as far as the interim period, let's say before build out, I think Mark's presentation today showed that we have worked into the ROI for the RMA that's on the agenda for tonight, has the undeveloped land tax covering any deficit that's generated, not an estimated deficit, but we would be using the actual sales prices that were used and then go in and calculate the actual deficit year to year. It's a pretty unprecedented thing to do that type of true up. And it's I would say it's pretty good security. It's not perfect security, but it's better security for the interim period than I've ever seen in any other project. So I think that was a good positive outcome of the negotiations between the consultant team and the developer. How can we generate more taxes? Well, one thing that we haven't discussed very often on these in these discussions is that even though we've estimated that the project generates a significant surplus of millions of dollars, the developer has also offered to enact a special tax B that covers the maintenance of all the new public facilities and infrastructure. They could have easily said, hey, you're already getting these millions of dollars, use that for the public facilities and infrastructure. But we have a special tax B that's pretty significant, and that covers any new stuff that the city would need to maintain. So I would say, that's one way to generate more taxes, and we did that. You said you wanted the consultant team to say that this project is good for the general fund, or how can we make it better? I fully believe that the project is good for the general fund. And if we're thinking about alternatives, I have a hard time thinking of a better alternative than high value housing. That's where most of your revenues come from, is homes with very high sales prices. I might not achieve other municipal goals. There is an affordable housing component. It might not be as beneficial as doing entire blocks of affordable housing. But what it does is it generates a significant general fund surplus that can be used for other purposes: homeless intervention, treatment programs, health and human services. That's to me, that's the benefit of the project, and it's one strategy that a lot of cities in the Bay Area have been using. Approve very high value projects, take the positive impact from the general fund, and then use that to help out the community. So yeah, I'm not saying it's the only way, but it's a pretty good way to use the tight housing market to help out the city with the surplus from that project. And those are all the points in my notes.
Thank you. Councilmember Gail McLaughlin.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. I just want to start out by saying that there have been some additional analyses. I think a member of the public has mentioned that there were 3 additional analyses over the course of the last couple of years, few years. And these analyses show a totally different scenario because it's really looking at the project and the impact based on what will sell in Richmond, how quickly things will sell in Richmond, how high the prices would need to be to collect the amount of taxes that would be needed to cover the infrastructure costs, but also the ongoing costs of fire and police and maintenance of the project and the future homeowners in particular. So I want to address some of the comments, and there's a little overlap with what Councilmember Jimenez said, but I'm going to add a couple of thoughts onto those points and bring in a couple of other points. So first of all, it looks to me like the special tax that the developer has talked about will only be on an undeveloped property until build out. And so that's not showing the impact on the general fund after build out, because there will still be rising costs of fire and police operations. I also want to say this special tax does not present, it doesn't showcase the developer putting any skin in the game, no upfront cost, no guarantee. So that's my first point about the so-called concessions from the developer. My second point is something that's already been discussed. I want to reiterate and bring out a couple points to further elevate these points. The sales tax, the sales revenue is overstated. Most people in Richmond do not spend as much money in order to bring out the level of sales tax that the expectation is these future homeowners would be spending in Richmond. In fact, they're so outside of the core of Richmond at Point Mulati that the likelihood of them going, say, for example, to Marin County for grocery and other products, consumer products that they need is very high. And most people in Richmond will also not, as I think is in the case of any city, they, hey, you go to a neighboring city, you go, you drive, 20 minutes to a city nearby to get the particular product you want. So it's to say that they're going to spend as much as being said they will spend to get the amount of sales tax coming into our coffers is unrealistic, I believe. Also, as was mentioned, the property transfer tax is overestimated. The idea of having the whole 14% of the homes turn over each year, I think is really unrealistic. And in addition to the Chevron utility users tax being removed, and this has been said, we should have removed all of, many of the commercial anyway entities and utilized a residential tax, property tax as the comparison as to what is the average tax paid by Richmond residents. And what you have, and the average utility users tax payment, paid by residents. And the fact is that we have many businesses in Richmond that operate really high energy equipment 24/7. So you have a higher utility tax. Yes, for Chevron, you have a much higher utility tax, but for Sims Metal and others, you're going to have a higher utility tax than the average property owner. So an average property owner's utility tax is, or an average homeowner, renter even, what is the average utility tax of a resident seems to be a much better
You mute.
Are you done? You're muted.
I accidentally keep getting muted. Where did did I share about how I thought that Sims Metal should have been removed because they have big machinery operating day in and day out, and other big businesses have high energy equipment, and their utility users tax is going to be higher than a resident's utility user tax. So the resident's utility users tax is what should have been used as the element in the analysis. I also want to say that in addition to the revenue coming in being overestimated, the expenditures are underestimated. And one of the things we learned, some of us have met with the Terminal 1 developers, and we've learned that the reason they have had to reconfigure their property, their project, is because one of the reasons is the cost of materials building materials have went up exponentially, especially steel and cement. So we have a higher expenditure of costs going out. And in order to actually make the project work. So that's a factor that we all need to consider. And of course, the police and fire cost increases are known to go up higher than inflation. So even with the higher inflation we're facing an even higher police and fire cost. I also want to say that in order to get enough taxes from homeowners, future homeowners, through this CFD, we would have to charge exorbitant prices for these homes. And because you can only charge 0.4% of the assessed value of homes in the CFD, because we already have property taxes at 1.6% of assessed value, and that only leaves 0.4%. And 0.4% of what we expect these homes to sell for is not going to cover the needed revenue that the city's general fund will need in order to break even or not have an impact. So I think that the city has no reason to think that 1,450 homes can repay $292 million in CFD bond principal with an interest of 6 or 7%, while keeping homeowner tax payments below that 2%, which again is only another 0.4% of home value. And it's even unsure whether a $150 million CFD bond, if the infrastructure costs were only half of the 300 that is being projected by the developer. So we know that the cost of infrastructure is extraordinarily high, and we can't get to that number in taxation based on the amount of taxation we can put into the CFD. In addition, the developer again has only said through this special tax that it will be good up until build out, and there's going to be exorbitant increases or impact on the general fund, because after build out, there's still going to be increased expenses for fire and police, and that's not factored into the developers or the consultants' presentation and analysis. I also want to say that, and just kind of echo what Mark Northcross said, that there are risks associated with foreclosure. We have known that SunCal has 22 bankruptcies over the last decade, and and right now what we have is a Winehaven LLC, which is a shell for SunCal. So SunCal feels it's protected. It could walk away because Winehaven will be the entity that's left, and it has no money. It's an empty vessel. So I think we have big risks with them walking and us being left to foreclose and go into an auction and not come up with the needed funds for our community to put back into our general fund after so much expense. So I would just want to end by saying that it's really clear that there are so many uncertainties. I would go beyond uncertainties, but if some of you want to think, or if the consultants want to simply say, well, there are uncertainties, I would say there's certainly an impact to the general fund of, anywhere from tens of millions to 100 millions, hundreds of millions. And frankly, just those few years during build out, even if they were, and again, I don't think they're guaranteed because of the fact that there's no upfront money, you're going to, we're going to be left in a really bad situation. But even if they were paid in that build out period, afterward, the impact on the general fund is going to remain. And I don't think we should be saying, oh, well, we have 15 years or so that will be, paid for by the developer. And who cares? There'll be a different city council then. There'll be a different generation that has grown up then. We don't care about them. I care about them. I don't think we should be making decisions that have an impact in years to come, decades to come. We should be thinking of what is good for our community and not have any risk. And this obviously has a risk. And as stated in the resolution put together by our city attorney, the resolution to decline the CFD, it states in the development agreement that there cannot be an impact on the general fund. We obviously have uncertainty and more concepts and concerns about impact on the general fund. So we have every reason, and my thought is that we need to deny this CFD and really make it clear that this development project and this developer will be a problem for our community, our low-income community that is struggling to make ends meet after an impact of a pandemic, after the ongoing impact of a war, which is only going to continue to impact the economy of our cities, of our nation. And it's time to be prudent. It's time to be careful. It's time to be cautious. It's time to uplift our community and not put some blind trust in developers. So those are my comments for now. I would be happy to make a motion at the appropriate time that we support the resolution to deny the CFD.
Thank you, Gail. Are there any other comments? If not, do we have public speakers?
I do not.
I'm sorry. Yes. Attorney Alshire?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. Well, it was my intent to just make a couple comments after the staff presentation. The package that we prepared on Tuesday has the resolution of intent. The basic process is that under the Mello-Roos Act, you adopt a resolution of intent, and that has to be 30 days before you consider adopting the district. So that resolution of intent is what was on Tuesday's agenda and is what got continued to today. One of the things we tried to make clear in that resolution and in the resolution that you have today is that the resolution to form the district, that there's a public hearing that occurs at that time. So if that went forward, which is what we were recommending, there would be a public hearing, and the resolution of intent is really the notice of the hearing and lets everybody prepare for the hearing. At that hearing, the resolution that we're adopting that we were recommending adopting now makes it clear, and we reinforce that language that the council does have questions. Not all of the questions about the impact on the general fund are fully addressed, and whatever questions there are, we would have the opportunity of responding to those and then coming back at the hearing on April 19th. And at that hearing, we would try to further address the uncertainties. So that's the resolution that was in your packet. And the fact that you adopted the resolution of intent does not bind you to have to adopt and form the district. And you are not informing the district. You couldn't change anything from what was in the intent, what was in the resolution of intent, but you're not required to go forward. Now, there's a second resolution, wasn't included with the packet. Basically, with what happened on Tuesday, I did talk to a couple council members about why they were continuing it and what issues and concerns they had. And I realized in that conversation that there might be council members not willing to go forward. And so I put together a second resolution, and that resolution was not in the packet, but is available now. It is on the website, and it identifies the sorts of issues that you've basically, I went back over the last couple months, the hearing we had on February 22nd, and I tried to highlight issues that reflected what those concerns were. So that resolution, and it reflects some of the things you've just heard now, but it reflects broadly issues that have been raised over the last 2 months concerning whether or not to go forward with the CFD. The CFD, the development agreement does make it clear that if the council is concerned, if there's a reasonable concern that the general fund will have to be hit in order to fund these improvements, if it will require contribution, if the police and fire services would require a general fund support, the development agreement makes it clear there's to be no general fund support. And if there's a basis of thinking there would be, that's a basis to not go forward with the CFD. In fact, the language in the CFD says even if there's an initial administrative cost that has to be supported by the general fund, that's a grounds for not going forward. So I wanted to make that clear. The resolution identifies things like whether you have concerns about where the developer's getting its money from, if there's the general fund issue, if you have reason to question the support that would be provided. It also indicates that at this point in time, there are financial obligations the developer was supposed to pay, which include supporting the litigation, which the litigation on the CEQA and other issues, the city's put out $1 million with respect to that. There's also payments for the consultants that have put together the CFD. These items, the developer has paid some funds, but is not current in terms of what the obligations are, and that's recited in the resolution. So there's really we thought to be prepared, you needed the resolution to go forward with forming the district, the resolution of intent. Staff is recommending that course of action. However, we've during the course of this week, we have prepared an alternative resolution should the council choose to go that direction, which puts together reasons for not going forward with the CFD. So I just want to make sure that was clear. And so I think that I'm happy to answer any questions about that, but hopefully that's understandable in terms of there being two choices.
Thank you. I want to make sure that every council member and the mayor has a chance to speak. I know that the mayor is having difficulty with his technical situation, but Mayor Butt, do you have any comments?
No, not yet.
Okay, thank you. So any questions from other council members? If not, I'd like to make a statement, and this is something that's been of concern to me ever since I've been on the council, and that is the development policies of the city. I've noticed that in all the years past, the city has developed in such a helter-skelter way that we have sections of the city that are practically communities all of their own. And they pay taxes and they expect the same services that we receive. And in order to do that, we can't afford to give them the kind of services that they expect, mainly because of the distance that fire and police have to travel. So when we keep expanding the city in such a way that we need these services to expand beyond their capability, we're actually impacting the general fund. And I think in the future, something that we should do is to do an evaluation of the communities that we have already created to see whether or not the cost of providing services that should be expected actually can be afforded by the taxes received by those communities. For instance, we know that Berkeley, Richmond have practically the same population, but we have 3 times the land area that needs to be covered, which means that with the same number of police, the kind of coverage that Berkeley gets is totally impossible in the city of Richmond. But we don't have the revenue to increase the services for that same coverage per area. So it's just something that we need to consider, and that concern extends to the development of Point Melody. So if there are no other questions, then it's time to entertain a motion.
There are public speakers now.
Oh, there are? Okay, thank you. Okay, public speakers then.
I have 2 public speakers. I have Pam Stello, well, 3 now, Elsa Stevens and Sally Tobin. I'll start with Pam Stello. Pam, you'll have 2 minutes to speak. You can go ahead and start. Pam Stello. Okay, I'll move on to Elsa Stevens and come back to Pam. Elsa Stevens, you'll have 2 minutes to speak. You can go ahead and start.
Yeah, forget about that new district. I have been for years warning against this development. And my warning has always been, don't bankrupt the city of Richmond for some wild and crazy project. If there's an alternate resolution, make sure that that resolution does not allow the project come in through the back door. This project is just a death trap and a money hole, and you just forget about it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. The next speaker is Sally Tobin. Sally, you'll have 2 minutes to speak. You can go ahead and start.
Thank you. By accident, this basically follows what Councilmember Martinez was talking about, and that is, what about sewers? There is agreement that the sewer line offshore to Keller Beach is corroded and leaking to the point that there is now a moratorium on new hookups. How will the sewage from the development get to the sewage treatment plant run by Veolia? One suggested route has been installation of a new sewer main down Western Avenue to Marine, where there would be a pumping station to get the sewage over the hill to Tewksbury. This pump would be noisy and require maintenance, and all the homes downhill from Western Drive would have to install individual pumps to move their sewage uphill. A far more workable plan was proposed by Norman Hansky, in which a new sewer line would basically follow 580. But there has been no commitment to either plan, so the city is being asked to approve financially shaky CFD bonds when an established neighborhood risks being subjected to the double penalty of reduction in services due to a financial hit to the Richmond General Fund, and also being subjected to the smelly burden of the wealthy development sewage. Thank you.
Thank you. And I'll try Pam Stello again. Pam, you'll have 2 minutes to speak. You can go ahead and start.
Thank you. Pam Stello, Richmond resident. So my comments actually dovetail with Sally's, surprisingly. I want to address the infrastructure capacity requirement in the development agreement. This would have additional impacts on our general fund if the CFD were approved. It requires the city to provide sufficient capacity for various kinds of infrastructure, utilities, storm drainage, flood control, sewer connection, and the list goes on and on. There seems to be no limit in the development agreement to what the city will have to provide. No specifics about the limits of what the city providing sufficient capacity for this project even means. It sounds like another blank check in this project. I also have a query. How did Mr. Medvey come to be hired to run the numbers? He ran the numbers, Mark said, but when there were disagreements pointed out by Claudia, for example, Mr. Medvey claims Mark, or they, referencing other consulting firm, entered that figure. Mr. Medvey again claims a surplus for our general fund tonight that's been discredited by 3 independent analyses. Under normal circumstances, a developer would submit a proposal that independent city-hired consultants analyze. I hope that is the case for this analysis, and that the city creates policies to avoid the possibility of developer-biased consultants hired to do independent analysis for our city and for our residents. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker is Jeff Kilbreth. Jeff, you'll have 2 minutes to speak. You can go ahead and start.
Hi, can you see me?
I cannot see you, but I can hear you.
Okay. All right, well, you don't need to see me. Okay, I just want to emphasize 2 simple points because the numbers get so complicated. It's no surprise that 1,452 homes don't pay enough in property taxes to support an entire dedicated fire station and a police beat. I mean, think about it. How many neighborhoods in Richmond of 1,000 households have their own dedicated fire station? You know, it's like 7, 8, 9,000 people normally. So this whole idea is kind of crazy from the beginning because of the highly unusual demand for a dedicated police and fire station. But that's what the property insurance company believes because of the fire risk. And the mortgage companies will do whatever the property insurance people say they got to do. And they're going to not give mortgages and they're not going to give property insurance unless there's a dedicated fire station. So I think that, that should make you feel comfortable in understanding why it's probably, not a benefit for the general fund. I think it's, maybe I'll just leave it at that. It just was never likely to work. But one last point that has to be recognized, the commercial plan, the idea of having a lot of office space and maybe a hotel, these are very speculative things at this point, and it would be foolish to rely on that at this point in the, given the economy and all the empty office space. San Francisco is the leading place in the country for empty office space.
Time has expired. Thank you. And the next speaker is Dan Engler. Dan, you'll have 2 minutes to speak. You can go ahead and start.
Thank you, and good evening, council members. My name is Dan Engler. I am an attorney who represents developer Winehaven Legacy. And I just as we're approaching a vote here, want to provide a little context that the city and the council and staff previously closely analyzed this project back in 2020. There were many hearings. There was a fiscal analysis that was prepared. There was a fiscal analysis that was peer reviewed, and the city decided to approve the project and entered into 2 separate contracts. At the time the project was approved, a disposition and development agreement and a separate statutory development agreement. And both of those contracts obligate the city to cooperate in good faith to form the CFD. And I think if the council were to decline the resolution of intent to form the CFD, the city would be in breach of those contractual obligations. So I just wanted to put that out there. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker is Jim Hansen. Jim, you'll have 2 minutes to speak. You can go ahead and start.
Thank you, council. Just a short follow-up on just the previous comments. Back in 2020, there was a financial report and then a BAE peer-reviewed report. The strategic economics report that was really coming to the forefront tonight, finally, was only given 2 minutes by the council at that time. It was only given 2 minutes. And these were such critical issues around the overvaluation of the property and the undervaluation of the income. And so I just want to put some of the history to make that accurate, that those were not given a fair hearing, and they're finally being heard after all this time. So thank you very much.
Thank you. The next speaker is Deborah Bayer. Deborah, you'll have 2 minutes to speak. You can go ahead and start.
Thank you. This is Debbie Bayer from Richmond. I think, I don't know how you guys are going to vote, and I don't know, you're in a place where you have to worry about the city and legalities and everything. But to me, the issue of the general fund, the reason that not to vote for this is because there is no guarantee that it won't affect the general fund. And the simplest point that I can make is that somehow, after years of discussing this, about 2 weeks before that you're having this vote, all of a sudden the bond maximum went from $108 million to what, $298 million? Like, what the hell? This seems like a classic bait and switch to me. I mean, there was really no reason given for it. And it didn't make any sense why the amount of the bond should be tripled. And none of the financials were based on this tripled amount. And it makes the whole point moot, because everything you have been told up to this time is totally altered. And I also wonder what happened to the $50 million that SunCal was going to put into the infrastructure by themselves, because they had to, as our financial advisor told us, had to have skin in the game. That seems to have disappeared. And then finally, the other thing we have been told all along is all this money was going to be put by SunCal into Winehaven to rebuild Winehaven and make it this wonderful center. And that seems to have disappeared also. So those are all the points I want to make. But I think the most important one is that the amount of the debt tripled for no reason.
Time has expired. Thank you. And there are no more public speakers.
Thank you. I see a hand up. Gail?
Hey, I had a hand up.
Oh, okay. Tom. Your hand went down, so I didn't know whether or not you wanted to speak, but go ahead, Mayor.
Thank you. So I'm at Yosemite at a meeting of local government officials, and my iPad's not working, so that's why I'm not on here. But I just want to say a couple of things I haven't heard tonight, and that is that if this alternate motion or alternate resolution is adopted, and it ends up with SunCal not purchasing the project, then the next thing that happens is that Levin and the tribe upstream in the tribe can buy the whole property for $400. And I just haven't heard anybody in the last several hours, nobody's ever discussed that as the alternative. And I think that's something you ought to be discussing. You know, if they buy the property for $400, you're not going to have any police station. You're not going to have any fire station. You're not going to have any maintenance. You're not going to have anything going on out there at all. And that's definitely going to impact the general fund. It costs the city almost $1 million a year just to take care of the place and secure it right now. So I think that's what people ought to be looking at instead of picking apart the staff recommended resolution. Think about what happens if you go somewhere if you don't do that. And you know, not only that, you're going to be looking at hundreds, potentially $100 million in litigation. You're going to be looking at issues with the Ninth Circuit and the federal court. And that's really what we ought to be talking about, among other things. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Gail?
Yes, thank you. First of all, let me address Mayor Butt's comments. First of all, I was not at the table that awarded the opportunity for the purchase of this property for $400. We are in this situation because of that. And I was not at the table that approved this project either. So there's a lot of history here. And Mayor Butt, you were involved all along. And I think there's good and important and essential reasons for why we cannot move forward today, and we cannot move forward with this CFD at all. And in terms of what would happen if the property goes into the hands of upstream Giddyville, they then have a number of years to consider developing it. If they do develop it, they split the proceeds between themselves and the city. But there's always an option for settlement talks to happen at that point before any purchase. And of course, they don't have to purchase it, but there is a lot of history to this project, and a lot of it was done in recent years with this amended settlement, as well as the approval of this project, which has an impact on the general fund. I do want to just explain a little bit more about the Terminal 1 project. The Terminal 1 project was having condos, just as this project was having condos, but because of the cost of materials going up, some steel and cement and condos need to be retrofitted down into the bedrock, I guess it is, and that costs a lot. And so they are no longer able to do condos at Terminal 1. So they're changed their project to single family homes. And this project has a lot of condos. And so I do not think they're feasible. And they will pencil out for the project. I mean, you would have to sell, the initial selling price was something, way up there, over $1 million for a condo. And I think it would even have to be higher to cover the costs for the developer to build, but also to provide the amount of taxes that would be needed for the city to come into prevent an impact on our general fund. It's not going to happen. There's so much uncertainty. So I would like to make the motion that we approve the resolution of the City Council of the City of Richmond, California, declining to establish the City of Richmond Community Facilities District number 2022-1, as there is evidence, and this is the name of the resolution, so the city clerk can get it right from the name of the resolution of decline. Let me finish. As there is evidence that such district could require financial support from the city's general fund and no guarantee from the developer that it will not. There are uncertainties over the phasing of improvements and the developer's financial capacities and performance, and the developer has not performed all its obligations. So that is my motion.
Okay. Claudia?
Yeah, thank you. So I just wanted to
Is there a
say,
second, first of all, Vice Mayor?
Not yet. I'm going to let Claudia speak and we'll see if we have a second there.
I second that motion first.
Okay.
And I wanted to speak in the discussion because what I am second this motion because I had been looking at the numbers. And yet we are in a legal and a difficult situation here that was done by the previous city council. And we cannot deny that, right? We cannot deny that what happened if Gideville, the tribe, and Levine or Winehaven take this. But they also will have to have development. And they will, I don't know if a developer will be coming here to do a project like this without any CFD or any other support. And also, so we have these constraints, but we also need to think about what we are putting the city in with this development, right? And despite all these analyses, the analysis has flaws that has been talking and discussing, and it has never shown us really the bottom line of really a 50-year cash flow, which is what we have been asking for. And then that says that, oh, we had this CFD, and just think about people in this district with all these special taxes that we are putting, so so this project doesn't impact negatively the general fund. Will be paying third more for services than other residents in the city of Richmond. Well, I don't know, but that will upset when people find out that and start asking for more and more because they could feel entitled that they are paying 3 times more for the same services. And how that will put city councils here in this place to answer to that constituency. So it doesn't also look at the equity issue here as well in making people to pay more, but also making people to get entitled to ask for more. And just kind of like, it could be a competition of low-income communities that deserve more and people with high income to say, well, we are paying more, we need more, right? And this is not a situation that we want to be, but we are here. And for me as a city council, I want to do everything in my part to protect the impact of projects like this on the general fund, to protect the impact of projects like this in what conversation needs to happen around who deserves services or not. And like, as I said, like we are in difficult times. 2018 was different. 2019 was different. We are in a different situation. We had inflation, and maybe the feeling is, oh, that will pass, but maybe not. We haven't talked about what are the implications of climate change in a state like California. So these are many other reasons where I had been the one asking for so many data. And for me, and for me, the thing is that I was just amazed that the data that I was asking for, it hasn't been provided before. And now and this is why we had been saying, oh, this is going to be great. And then, oh no, by the way, this is going to have an impact in the general fund. But no worry, we are working with the developer. We trust the developer. They are great. They are saying all these things. But then it doesn't pencil out. So for this reason, I am supporting this motion that Councilmember McLaughlin is bringing. Thank you.
So we have a first and a second. And before we go to roll vote, I want to say that I'm disheartened to hear that Mr. Engler doesn't understand that people can decline in good faith. I'm sure that if he had all the questions that we had, he would also decline in good faith. So I'm just asking for his understanding as we vote. Can we take the vote now?
Councilmember Jimenez,
Yes.
Councilmember Johnson, Councilmember Johnson,
He's absent.
Councilmember McLaughlin,
Here, I'm sorry, yes.
Councilmember Willis,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Martinez,
Yes.
Mayor Butt, Mayor Butt. Okay, Mayor Butt is absent.
Mayor Butt, he's on mute. I don't know if he wants to unmute himself. Okay.
Mayor Butt, your vote? Okay, the motion passes with Councilmember Bates and Mayor Butt absent.
And Councilmember Demlis.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, well, that concludes our business. So it's time for adjournment. Thanks so much to everyone who attended. And we'll see you at the next city council meeting.
Thank you, everybody.
Goodbye, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Good evening.